Բարև ձեզ հարգելի բարեկամներ, Սփյուռքի ձայնը հեռուստահանդեսը դարձյալ ձեզ հետ է։ Այսօրվա մեր հաղորդումը ամբողջությամբ նվիրված է անցյալ կիրակի հայոց մեծ եղեռնի 101-րդ տարելիցին նվիրված ոգեկոչության միջոցառմանը, որ տեղի ունեցավ Նյու Յորքի Times Square հրապարակում։
On Sunday, April 24, 2016, thousands gathered at one of the most important landmarks in the world, Times Square, to commemorate 101st anniversary of the Armenian Genocide. On that day, Armenians and non-Armenians alike from all parts of the country came together to pay homage to those killed in 1915 and to show the perpetrators and the world at large that the legacy of those perished during the Armenian Genocide continues to live on. The Times Square commemoration event brought thousands of Armenians from East Coast and across the country to the center of New York City to display their dedication to the memory of martyrs while calling for justice. Holding high the flags of Armenia and Artsakh, the demonstrators were memorializing their ancestors and showing ongoing support for their homeland. The event was organized by the Knights and Daughters of Vartan, which has been organizing Times Square commemoration event for the past 31 years. The event began with American and Armenian anthems performed by the Shnorali Choir of Holy Martyrs Armenian Church and Aregak Children Choir of Hamazgayin of New Jersey, under the direction of Vagharshak Ohanyan, following by Archbishop Oshakan Choloyan's prelate of the Armenian Church of America giving the invocation. Attending the event were members of Armenian clergy, elected officials who have shown steadfast support for Armenian genocide recognition in US, representatives of Armenian organizations, and many others. MCs for the program, Dr. Haik Kocharian, Professor of History at Lafayette College, and Armen Macomber, New Jersey attorney, read the opening remarks. In his speech, Senator Robert Menendez of New Jersey, a longtime supporter of Armenian cause, spoke about Turkey's distortion of history and its government's relentless denial of historical truth, calling upon the United States to recognize the genocide and call it for what it is, a genocide.
To me, all men of good will, genocide is genocide. It cannot be called anything else, and it must be called for what it is. Every year, we come to Times Square to remember, but this year, which commemorates more than a century of silence on this issue, we should all mark this 101st commemoration with a collective resolve to renew our effort to present the stark historical facts in black and white, because every year, intense lobbying and opposition by the Turkish government attempts to relegate them to the dustbin of history, to keep those facts in the shadows, and to find excuses to avoid responsibility.
So thank you very much for your participation. Year after year we come here demanding justice. Where do you think we are with acceptance of resolution of Armenian genocide?
Well, I think there's a never-growing reality that what happened between 1915 and 1923 is genocide, a loss of 1.5 million Armenian lives and many more who were displaced. I was proud to see, when I was the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee about a year ago, to actually pass the Armenian Genocide resolution for the first time in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. That was the beginning of showing that there is more widespread understanding and acceptance, and I expect that we will ultimately have our moment in which we will pass the resolution not only to the Committee of Foreign Relations, but also to the United States Senate and send it to the President, so that this is a recognition not by a body of the Congress, but by the United States as a whole. And so these commemorations serve, yes, to commemorate, but also to galvanize the support necessary to achieve that moment.
As you know, recently there's been escalation of violence in Nagorno-Karabakh. Where do you see the resolution of this conflict, and do you condemn the aggression from Azerbaijani side?
Well, this is clearly a break from the truce that had been observed, and it seems to be a unilateral break by the Azerbaijanis. And this is where the United States can once again show leadership by coming upon the Azerbaijanis and having them, number one, go back to the truce, and we need a long-term solution and justice in Nagorno-Karabakh.
The founder of Congressional Caucus of Armenian Issues, Congressman Frank Pallone, spoke of the importance of continuing to commemorate the Armenian Genocide, especially in the wake of recent hostilities in Nagorno-Karabakh. He urged the US to cut off military assistance to Azerbaijan and demanded that Aliyev come to peace table in order for Artsakh to join Armenia or become an independent entity.
We are determined that we want to make the point to our government that we need to send a message to Aliyev and the leadership in Azerbaijan that this cannot continue, that we're not going to stand back. We want Aliyev and Azerbaijan to come to the peace table. We want to see a negotiated settlement that has Artsakh through its own plebiscite as part of Armenia or as an independent republic of Armenians. And it is also very important that in Congress that we cut off military assistance to Azerbaijan. How can we continue to give military assistance to Azerbaijan when they could theoretically use that against Armenia? And it is very important that you, in your activities, not only demand recognition of the Armenian genocide in the resolution, but also demand that our government step up and recognize what's happening and the aggression and the rhetoric that's taking place on behalf of the Azerbaijan leadership against Armenia. Because if we don't, we could see an outright war that goes on for months or years with tremendous amount of loss of life.
Thank you so much for being here. Year after year, we gather here demanding justice. But it seems like it's a difficult, challenging, uphill battle. Unfortunately, President Obama recently, in his 8th address, called it Metziagern, for which we are very appreciative, but the word genocide was not uttered. Are you optimistic that we're finally going to get our justice?
Well, we will, but obviously not this year. I mean, it's embarrassing to me that we still haven't had the Congress recognize the genocide. And of course they did many years ago, but we need to have a recognition today. But I do want to say that I think it was important for so many people to be here today also because of what happened with the Azerbaijan aggression in Artsakh just in the last few weeks. Because to me, in some ways, it is linked to the genocide. I mean, the fact of the matter is that Aliyev gave this order to attack either while he was here or soon after. And I just think that if the United States government pushes harder, first of all, if they recognize the genocide and they push harder against Azerbaijan and they say that this aggression is not acceptable, that it's less likely to happen. And I really think it's important now to, for the United States to push Azerbaijan to sit down and negotiate a settlement that has Artsakh be part of Armenia or its own Armenian Republic, and also to eliminate any kind of military assistance to Azerbaijan. We need to send a message to Azerbaijan that what they're doing with this renewed aggression is simply not acceptable. Otherwise, we might have another war. So I want to stress that as much today as the genocide recognition. We had Armenian civilians and soldiers that were mutilated, beheaded. So, in many ways, it's sort of a continuation of the atrocities of the past.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all of your support.
All right, nice to see you.
Senator Chuck Schumer expressed his unyielding support for the recognition of Armenian genocide and voted to push forward the genocide recognition resolution in the Senate. He also reflected on his friendship with the late Sam Azadian, the founder of Armenian Genocide Times Square Commemoration.
So many in this audience have had parents, grandparents, great aunts or uncles, relations of all kinds who were slaughtered in Armenia during these terrible times. And many others, as that sign which says, "My grandfather survived, I will never forget it." Many others lived through the Metziagern, the Armenian Genocide. It galls survivors. It galls those who lost loved ones to see that people are denying their suffering. It's an outrage. It would burn me up every single day, as it does. We remember their stories. They're imprinted on the survivors' memories as well as on our memories. We come here each year to commemorate and push for more widespread recognition. I stand with you in labeling the atrocity committed on the Armenian people for what it was, genocide.
Are you optimistic that finally United States will accept the Armenian genocide?
Yes, I am. Dr. King, Martin Luther King said, the arc of history is long, but it bends in the direction of justice. That will happen with the Armenian genocide. We just had Pope Francis speak out against it, and momentum is growing. You cannot sweep such a horror under the rug. And the conscience of the world, it takes a long time, but will rise to the occasion.
Recently, there's been escalation of conflict in Nagorno-Karabakh. How do you see the resolution of this conflict?
Well, I hope it'll be resolved peacefully, and I hope that, the Armenian presence there will be recognized and respected.
A native of Turkey, academic Umit Kurt, who specializes in research in the confiscation of Armenian properties during the Armenian Genocide, spoke of Turkey's denialism and the extreme violence and mass murders that befell on Armenians.
In Turkey, we live under so-called truth regime of deceitful policy. This regime has been able to preserve itself up to a certain period. It built itself protective castles and created a strong ideological discourse, an infrastructure, an important indoctrination process with which to buttress itself. For this purpose, the bureaucrats of the truth regime, intellectuals, and all possible ideological and bureaucratic tools for carrying out this denialist policy have been mobilized. An entire country, with its public opinion, media, history foundation, higher education foundation, central Ottoman archives, universities, military general staff, war history office, Ministry of Education, Board of Education and the Discipline, through history curriculums and teachers, and through the education faculties created by those teachers, has twinned itself to a historical event which took place 100 years ago. What happened in 1915? Everything was burned, finished, and turned into ashes. But these ashes were recreated. Armenian nations were recreated by these ashes, and we will carry them with our hearts and spirits. Today, as a Turkish citizen, educated in Turkish schools and this education system, today, if you ask me what happened, it was genocide in 1915, and it is still genocide today.
Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for lending your voice to the support of this cause. As someone who's intimately involved in understanding of Armenian genocide during the Ottoman Empire, why do you think Turkey refuses to recognize this? Something that happened 100 years ago. What is Turkey afraid of?
Yeah, it's a very, very grave issue for Turkey, because if your existence depends upon the non-existence of, or absence of another identity or another subject, of course you should just keep denying, because the existence of Turkish Republic and existence of Turkish people and the community is based upon the extermination and annihilation of its other Ottoman citizens, like Armenians, like Assyrians, and the Greek population. But first and foremost, of course, the extermination of Armenians. In order to forge a new nation state, in order to forge a new national identity, they thought they had to erase the history, they had to erase the history of their Christian population and so forth. But of course, the wealth and the richness of many people in Turkey, I'm talking about ordinary Muslims, local elites, and also urban bourgeois and etc., they all based on the Armenian property and Armenian wealth as well. It is one of the major reasons why the Turkey denies Armenian genocide.
As someone who lived in Turkey, is it even feasible that at least a new generation, a progressive generation, will be curious enough to look into their past and maybe down the line come back to in terms with their own history?
Yes, it's possible, and actually I am part of this generation as well. I could see myself as a part of this generation. Now Turkey Of course, there is this denialism, not only state denialism, also denialism also, is fed and breed by the different sections of society. But also there is another section of society which includes like liberals, liberal leftists, and the social democrats and the Democrats. This part of society, they incline to, bring up Armenian genocide. They want to discuss about it. For instance, last year, more than 35 cities, the commemoration events, were held, took place, and a new generation and the historians and scholars are curious about what happened to Armenians, and they are, looking at this issue from a critical perspective, critical viewpoint, and now this part of society and also acknowledge Armenian genocide and wants to make pressure on the Turkish government to acknowledge it, to come to terms with their, the dark annals of their history.
I was just told from the site here that you speak Armenian. How did that happen?
Հայերեն լեզու սորվիր համար ես հայկական եկեղեցի կացիմ Բոստոնի մեջ, Ոթուրտանի մեջ գաբրիմ, որովհետև այն հայերենի լեզու շատ կարևոր լեզու է անոր համար dissertation-ն գրել եմ, որովհետև հայերեն սորվեցամ։
Շատ շնորհակալություն։
Նմանապես։
Present at the demonstration were also members of American Kurdish Association who came to lend their support to the Armenian cause. On behalf of Andrew Cuomo, Governor of State of New York, Gina Martinez, the Deputy Commissioner of Regional Affairs and Federal Programs, issued a proclamation declaring April 24, 2016 as Armenian Remembrance Day in the state of New York. Following the proclamation, Dr. Pamela Steiner, the great-granddaughter of Henry Morgenthau, the former U.S. ambassador to the Ottoman Empire during the Armenian Genocide, took the podium.
The ending of genocide denial, that is acknowledgement of what happened by Turkey, is of course extremely important. It should be accompanied by apology, promise not to repeat, payment of reparations, correction of history teaching, creation of memorials, and dememorialization of certain street names and tombs. Such actions would lead to imagined and unimagined benefits for Armenians and Armenia, including, of course, improved Armenian-Turkish relations. One of the most important benefits from the ending of denial is that all living in the South Caucasus would be more secure and safe. At the same time, ending denial would also support the development of true democracy in Turkey, with widespread positive ramifications for that country and its peoples.
Thank you so much for your participation. Thank you for being here, and thank you for lending your voice to our cause. Why did you decide to come? What does this rally mean to you?
This rally, to me personally, really is an opportunity to talk about the issues that I think Armenians need to address and that they don't address enough. They focus more than necessary on what the Turks do and don't do. So I spoke about my hopes for Armenians and for the country and for the region, not just focusing outward, but I think it's an opportunity for a little bit of self-reflection. I think the one thing that is neglected is really to focus more on building their own strength from inside of themselves. And it's no good being so dependent on what the official Turkey does and doesn't do. They're a terrible regime, and Armenians need to focus more on themselves and build up their own strength. And that's what I think is the one thing that is somewhat neglected.
Among the speakers were also photojournalist Scott Tufenkian and daughter of Holocaust survivor Dr. Joan Rivets, who serves as New Jersey's Civil Rights Commissioner and the Associate Director of New Jersey Commission of Holocaust Education. The musical portion of the program offered the legendary musician Onik Dinkchian
Mor seranam yerke
And the Grammy-nominated artist Sebu Simonyan, highlighting the rich Armenian culture. Knights of Vartan Grand Commander Steve Kradjian and Daughters of Vartan Grand Matron Sona Manuelian also delivered remarks, followed by remarks by sponsoring organizations, including Stephen Mesropian, Chair of Armenian National Committee of America, Toros Sahakian, Armenian Assembly of America, Natalie Gabrielian, AGBU, Talin Babayan, ADL Ramkavar, Chris Parnagian, Armenian Bar Association, and Zaven Khanjian, Armenian Missionary Association of America. The winners of this year's Knights of Vartan essay contest were announced at the program. They were Megan Hess, first place, Victoria Chu, second place, and Ashken Kazarian, third place. The 101st commemoration of Armenian Genocide concluded with performance by Shnorali Choir and Aregag Children Choir, who sang Hayr Mer as well as God Bless America. As we enter a new century of commemorations of Armenian genocide, the Armenian nation's struggle for justice and recognition continues with renewed energy and determination. A struggle that will pass down from one generation of Armenians to another and will continue until every nation in the world recognizes the horrific massacres of Armenians by Ottoman Turkey in 1915 for what it is, a genocide.